Hello, everyone. Welcome. We are going to be starting very, very soon. All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 101 of PinTech Live. We have a very special guest with us today, Mr. Ryan Wanger of Comet Pinball. We've been wanting to bring him on to the show for a while, so yay, Kyle, we finally did it.
Well,
Aren't you proud?
Finally.
Thanks so much for having me, guys.
Yeah, so how's it going? Ryan, you just got back from an epic trip.
Yeah, I just did some international traveling for a few months because it was possible and something I've always wanted to do. And usually like you have a week or two for a trip and then you have to come back and you wish you had longer. But this time I got to go until I was sick of traveling.
Nice.
So what was this your first bit of international traveling or your first bit in a long time?
For the first bit in a while. I was abroad in Australia for a semester 20 years ago, and I've done a few other trips, usually between like 2 and maybe the longest was 6 weeks. But it had been a while. I'm not even quite sure when the last one was, but this one was just sort of like a little open-ended, and it was amazing. It was exhausting too. Just I don't know. I was in mostly Southeast Asia, and it was it was intense sometimes. Like the language and the weather and food, and just every day was like an adventure. Even just trying to feed yourself and find a place to sleep.
Did you find any places to play pinball while you were out?
There were hardly any.
Or you kept pinball away?
Yeah, well, there just were hardly any. I was traveling with Cindy, and we was in the chat there somewhere. We went to the Brisbane Masters tournament in Australia. So we were in the neighborhood of Australia, and we went. So we went there for it was like 10 days of tournaments in a row, and so that was plenty of pinball. Aside from that, there's good location pinball in Australia, but there wasn't. The only other place we found any was like 2 games at a bar in Singapore.
Huh.
And so yeah,
So that's what we need to go do, Kyle. We need to head over to Southeast Asia and start preaching the pinball gospel.
totally. If there's a place, I feel like Singapore would be the place to open an arcade. It seemed like there was one, and it's closed. I don't know if that's forever or a COVID thing, but that's like a wealthier place to live in. So people, like people have the money for probably to buy or play pinball machines there. So. Yeah.
We should ask.
Awesome.
We should ask Serene about that. One of the people that works with us is from Malaysia, but she has been to Singapore multiple times. She really wasn't into pinball until she started working with us, or right around when she started working with us. But I'm curious if she remembers anything like that. I've always wanted to go to Silverball Planet in Osaka.
Yeah.
I think if Emoto and I could go travel anywhere for pinball, I would love to go there.
It's such an amazing place, too.
I'm dying to go to Japan. They've been closed this entire time to tourists, and they just opened up a few days ago, I think.
Yep. It's time to buy tickets, y'all. All right, so
That's
we're
right.
here.
It's hard. Well, it's hard. Last thing about that, it's really hard describing what pinball is to somebody who doesn't know what it is. Think about how you would do that. They're like they always like come up with something else that
How did
they
you
think
describe
it is.
it?
And, well,
Pretend we don't know what pinball is. And
oh my
us.
gosh. I guess okay. So I would say,
There's a metal ball?
do you know what like an arcade is? And then
Nope.
sometimes I know, okay, well, do you know what video games are? And then everybody knows that. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, an arcade is like video games, inside of a machine. Like you would go to a place and you'd have video games inside of a big box, and you would put, coins in and you would play. Well, pinball is like that, except instead of a video game, it's like it's a ball moving around under glass. I don't know. It's so hard.
It becomes so bizarre.
And they're like, what?
It starts to seem more and more.
You press buttons and the ball gets whacked around. Oh, yeah. The last person that I described it to in Vietnam was like, oh, yeah, we have that. And then he went on to describe what pool is, like billiards. So I guess I didn't
like,
do that good of a job.
That's funny. It is.
Sure. Well,
thinking about it, like trying to describe the game is really bizarre. Like listening to Ryan try to like break it down to its most simple forms made it sound like I was confused. What are you talking about? It's such a bizarre thing to explain to people. That's kind of funny. Yeah.
And then you say, and so I sell these little LED bulbs that you put in those games that then light up at certain times.
Right.
Great segue.
Yeah, it's probably easier to describe that. I sell tiny little light bulbs for a thing you've never heard of.
Awesome. So for those who don't know what Comet Pinball is, which if they're on our show, they probably most likely do, but for the sake of it, Pinball 101, what is Comet Pinball? And who are you, Ryan?
Yeah, my name is Ryan Wanger. I got into pinball in 2013 because I don't know, maybe this is a roundabout way of answering your question, but my mom took me I was visiting my mom in Wisconsin. She picked me up from the airport, and on the way home, she stopped at this consignment shop, and there was a Double Dragon machine outside, like under an awning, and it was $200. And she said, "Should I buy this for your brother?" And I was like, "Yeah, like that, of course. Like that's an amazing price, I guess." I never really had considered even owning any sort of thing like that before, and so I helped her buy that and like move it into the basement, and that was a surprise Christmas present for my brother. And so And then when I got back to Colorado, I just was like, oh, I have a basement and I'm an adult with a job and, space down there. And so I went to go buy an arcade game from somebody on eBay. He had multiple other machines that were broken. And so I ended up like bringing home 3 machines and then worked on them a little bit, like got them running. And, I didn't know anything. So I was using the internet a lot. And whenever I would tell anyone about these arcade games, they would always have some kind of story that involved pinball and not arcade. They would say, "Oh, like, do you have any pinball games?" Well, my uncle like has 3 in his basement. Or, when I was growing up, this kid down the street had one, and we would always go to his house and play it. And it was always a story about pinball, and it was never about arcade games. And so I just kind of thought, oh, maybe I'm missing something here. And because I loved going to the arcade when I was a kid, and I definitely played pinball, but you put in like, when you know what you're doing, you put in a quarter and you just like mash the buttons and it goes right down the middle. And then you say, this sucks. Right. And then maybe you go to the next game and then the same thing happens. And it just seemed so random and unfair. So I would put my money into like Frogger, Pac-Man, things like that, where is like, I understood why I died, it was my fault.
Sure. No, I'm right there with you.
So, so people kept telling me about pinball. And then around that time, a barcade opened in the town where I was living, Boulder, Colorado. And they had like a free play night, or it was like maybe 3 hours one night of the week where the pinball machines were on free play. And so I started going there and then getting better at it. And then seeing somebody else, I don't know who it was now. I wonder if it's probably somebody I know, but I didn't know at the time, like somebody being like really violent with one of the machines over there and me being sort of like, scared or I don't know, something, like, oh no, this isn't right. And then just noticing that they were playing for a really long time. It was like, it wasn't just somebody mad. It was like somebody who knew how to move the machine. And that was a very interesting revelation. And so then that just led me down a rabbit hole, which has now consumed my life for the last 9 years. And so I got a machine that year, and then I had a friend who wanted one for his office, but they just nobody knew how to take care of it, and they're kind of expensive. So I bought one. They wanted an Addams Family, so I got one and put it in their office and rented it to them. And then a month later, they wanted another one, and then they had another office. And so I kind of like started accidentally operating games on the side. Yeah. And then in 2016, Comet Pinball Comet Pinball started in 2013, run by a guy named Art Haber in near Orlando. And so it was time for him to retire. And so he posted on Pinside, and I reached out to him. I wasn't even necessarily serious about taking over, but I was kind of curious, like, is this just a hobby, or is it like something that can pay the bills for because there's lots of little companies in pinball, and pinball is such a small thing, you're not sure exactly. And so when I, in further conversation with them, it was clear, like, oh, maybe this could be a thing that I do for work instead of what I was doing, which was a software engineer. And so was just fortunate. A lot of people were interested, and I was fortunate that him and I connected, and so ended up taking over and moving the company from flew down there, rented a U-Haul, learned all this stuff, loaded everything, and drove it to Colorado. And so Comet Pinball just sells lighting products for pinball machines, all modern lighting stuff, LEDs of all different colors and brightnesses, and we have lots of components. This thing called the Matrix system, which is sort of like Legos for lighting, for adding additional lighting to your pinball machine. You can just like hook them up to each other, connect them really easily, create your own effects and mods, and
We should dive into that really quick. Let's expand on that, because that is a really neat thing, and I would like to show that on the show sometime. But the Matrix system, it uses a bulb a bulb base that would plug into a socket, but it has leads on it, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a couple different ways. Probably the one that we like the most is what we call this quick connect, which is like you would take a bulb out of your machine and you would just, a socketed bulb, you would take it out and you would put our bulb in, and then coming off of there's a bulb on there with like a flexible head, and then coming off of that is a wire, like a pair of two little wires with a connector. And I believe they're like JST connectors, something like that. And so that's like giving you power. And now from there, you can like run a longer wire to a strip, or you can have a splitter that splits 3 different ways and connect things off of that. And there's post lights and, like I said, strips and, spotlight connectors and all this stuff. And so over time, we've kind of been trying to like come up with more stuff and package things together. Like we now have flipper button kits. So nice. You can buy just this little thing. It's less than $20, and you can wire that one even into the coin door. And it's really easy. Like I said, there's the quick connects, and there's others. We also have like alligator clips too. So you can start the whole thing off with just a little pair of alligator clips. So it's all pretty easy for even if you've never soldered before.
Yeah, I think it's a really neat thing especially for like spotlights, like just to dwell on the matrix system for a second. This is like traditionally, the way people would wire in spotlights would like solder wires to lamp sockets from under the playfield, and then as soon as you need to like remove that assembly somehow, you have to cut them or unsolder them, and that's a pain in the butt. So if all you have to do now is unplug something, it's super sweet. I like it. Personally, I have not messed with it too much, but I think let's see how Baywatch turns out. Maybe we might need to add a spotlight or two.
Yeah, it's I probably need to do more with it myself. Because I operate games. I think I'm just like really focused on the games working, and I don't even mod my own games a ton.
What?
Yeah, I know it's a little embarrassing, but to me it's like really important that they're well lit, and so part of that is or a lot of that is just switching from incandescents to LEDs and sort of making the right choices with how you're doing it, and yeah.
How do you make the choices to go through all the effort of, not necessarily how, but why, but go through the effort of switching out your incandescent bulbs to these LED lights? Like, why would I want to do that?
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons. And actually, before I was interested in taking over Comet, I was sort of like overwhelmed myself with LEDs. You go and there's just a million of them, and we have over 1,000 different bulbs, and like that just sometimes crazy, because I tell people like there used to be basically 4 SKUs of incandescents, like a 6-volt wedge and a bayonet and then like a flasher, like a 12-volt wedge and bayonet, and that's pretty much it. And so to go to 1,000 from that is a little daunting, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. So the reasons to do it, one of the reasons to do it is power usage, power consumption, which is like good for the world and your electric bill. The incandescent bulbs give off a lot of heat. You would notice this just from like light bulbs in your house. Like if a light bulb is on and then you want to change it, it's like too hot to touch. And so that's not so great for your pinball machine. I'm sure you've seen older games where the plastics are a little bit warped, and that's happened because there's too much heat coming from the bulbs. Yep. And games with actual painted back glasses flaking, that's often the same thing. It's hot bulbs behind there wearing off the paint. And it even there's particular games like 90s Bally Williams games where if you're technical, you've probably had to go in and notice that like you have burnt connectors for the GI lighting in your back box, and that's kind of the same thing. So switching to LEDs will help with all of those things, and also they can be usually LEDs are brighter, and we have some that we sell that are kind of like similar. We have retro bulbs, which is kind of the term we use for similar to incandescent in brightness. So we have those, but most people end up like wanting something a little bit brighter. And that a common way that happens is some people have older machines, 90s machines, 80s machines, and then they start buying modern Sterns, and then they have the two side by side. And it's like, oh gosh, you don't realize necessarily
why is it so dark?
How dark some of those games are,
Totally.
just the way they were from the factory. And then maybe a final reason is just it's a pain in the butt to replace bulbs. So particularly if they're on location, but at your home too. And so you can just go through once and replace them with LEDs. And we don't really say necessarily like how long our bulbs last, but I've never had one. I operate games and I've never had one burn out. Like you have one that's bad once in a while, maybe from the beginning, but I think it's probably 40, 50, 60,000 hours, something like that. So
wow,
that's like decades on location even.
That's insane.
So,
to think about.
Buy our products, but don't buy so many that, you don't need to buy from us ever again.
Your business model is putting yourself
up. Someday there'll just be no one selling LEDs because no one will need them anymore.
Well, on this show, we have definitely gone over the technical side of why it's important to switch to LEDs, even if you hate LEDs and it is your life goal to never use LEDs in your pinball game. You should at least swap a certain percentage out to keep those connectors from ever burning up again, right?
Yeah. And actually, I think a lot of people who say they don't like LEDs, I think a lot of the times it could just be because they saw a game with LEDs in it and they didn't like
the color,
the artistic choices, made by the person. So,
and then thinking about it too, like going back to like 2012 or 2010, like when I started working in the pinball industry, the LEDs that were offered at that time were just hot garbage. Like inconsistent color temperatures, inconsistent all sorts of manufacturing, right? They all weren't the same brightness, etc. When I have people that were absolutely against LEDs, they want their game to look as authentic as they remember them in 1985. Right. And then I have them come over and, it's like, oh, this is a nice looking game. It's like, oh yeah, and it's lit 100% by LEDs. Like, no, really? And that's, it just, I don't know if anyone in the chat has been around pinball for that long, but just back in the day, all the choices were terrible. They would burn out.
Yeah, the color matching was really an issue that people had too, which now with, Comet, you guys have a specific bulb that will make you basically not notice if like an old EM had LED lights.
Don't even start talking about that yet. That's a whole other.
Oh, you don't want to open up that.
Oh man, that one's like. That's like asking someone how to clean your pinball machine.
No, it's cool. Well, I was going to say so Stern, I think one of the first games that Stern tried LEDs in was AC/DC Premium. Like the Pro had incandescents, but the Premium had LEDs, and there were 3 different colors.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, and those were we used to have those same kind of bulbs. We called those 2 LED bulbs because now our standard ones are called 2 SMD, which stands for surface mounted diode. So it's like a flat diode that lays on the surface of the bulb, and the ones that were the 2 LEDs had like a little just like a little bulb kind of that like stuck up off of the base of the machine. But those all went dim in I don't know, 6 months, 9 months, a year on location. Like you were just saying, things the early days of LEDs, like they just weren't as good. They didn't even last. I think those ones that they used in AC/DC and we used to sell may have even been shorter lasting than some incandescents. And I don't really know. I'm not exactly sure why. I think some people were saying they maybe were like designed for a lower voltage and they were being given too much. And So, but yeah, the new stuff is just, it lasts forever, and which is great for you guys. Maybe not for us.
We've got
For sure, we are grateful.
friend of the show, Brian O'Neill, is in the chat right now, kind of trolling and also being hilarious in his own way. Hello, Brian.
Well, you didn't want to ask.
I want to acknowledge that you are here.
Yeah, I'm trying to pay attention and look at chat a little bit. So thanks for everybody who's chiming in there. LA Forest, hello.
Do you want to respond to his last question?
Here, let me go. So Smidge asked what was my first pin. It was high speed. And the reason I got it was actually just because I thought, oh man, I need a modern game with like modern rules. And I couldn't bring myself to pay what it cost for that. And so I don't know, this high speed I found was just like the right price at the right time, and it needed some work. And I was like, all right, a few $100s high speed. And I played that game thousands of times in my basement. Like it was, I don't have it anymore, but yeah, I love it. I still love it. Okay, what is Brian?
How do the non-ghosting LEDs work versus regular ones?
Okay, yeah, that's a great one.
And can you explain what ghosting is for those?
Totally. Yeah. So another reason that people might not like LEDs is because there are some gotchas with some eras of games. And okay, so ghosting is this. There are okay, so a lot of machines, kind of all eras, there will be a little bit of voltage at a socket even when there isn't supposed to be. And like, let's just say it's 1 volt or half a volt or something like that. It may be there all the time, or it may like flicker on and off. And it didn't matter when you had incandescence in the game because it took more than that to illuminate the bulb. But LEDs can be illuminated with like a lot less voltage, and they also incandescents like heat up. I don't know if you know how an incandescent works. It's literally just like heating up a wire.
A little.
It's like yeah. And so like it gets hot and it glows, and then you reduce it and it cools off. So even if there was a little flicker, it wouldn't last long enough to illuminate the bulb, like to bring it up to brightness and back down again. So ghosting is when you have flickering on a bulb that should be off. This doesn't happen in the general illumination, and the general illumination means like all the bulbs that stick up, or most of the bulbs that stick up above the playfield that are just on all the time. So that's general illumination, or GI. The inserts are the bulbs that, or you could say like controlled lighting maybe would be the most general way of saying it, is bulbs that go on and off to indicate things that are happening during the game, like lighting your locks or lighting multi-ball, or, you know, or for older games, they could be in the back box, like player 1 light, player 2 light, you know, that kind of stuff. So with bulbs that are always on, there's no problem with ghosting, but bulbs that are off a lot of the time and come on once in a while, there often is ghosting issues. And so a non-ghost, so we sell bulbs called non-ghosting bulbs, and those have a resistor in them that prevents the light from turning on until the voltage gets to a certain point. So it's like, I don't know, 3.5 volts, we'll say. So until there's 3.5 volts at the socket, nothing happens. And then once it gets to 3.5 volts, then it just switches on.
Yeah, it raises the threshold for, come on.
Yeah. And so we, like, if you're not picky, you probably just can ignore non-ghosting bulbs and go on about your life. But if you're somebody who is playing and you notice like, hey, how come there's like that light, that, you know, that mode light that shouldn't be lit is just like, you know, flickering a tiny little bit, you could replace that with a non-ghosting bulb. And they're a little bit more expensive. I don't know, maybe 25%, 35% more expensive. And so that's it. And you can, like I said, you can never use them. You could just use a few here and there in a machine that, if it's bugging you. But some people will just use non-ghosting bulbs everywhere. And we sell game kits for like a kit for Adam's Family. It's all the bulbs you need for that. So in all our kits, we use non-ghosting bulbs just because we want, like we don't want you to put it in and then have some kind of flickering and then, so yeah.
Yeah.
No, for sure. And
Nice.
and non-ghosting bulbs, and correct me if I'm wrong, they're that is kind of specific to games using a lamp matrix, right? So you would not be able to use a non-ghosting bulb in a game like a Bally game or, any Bally game, right? Old Bally game, 6803 Bally game, right?
Well, so you can use them. What era did you just say?
Like
Like,
Old Bally, like Viking or Strikes and Spares or something like that, right?
yeah, okay. So there's another thing that happens. Let's see. I'm not sure that those games they don't really have issues with ghosting, I think.
They just flicker a lot.
It's not like you couldn't use the bulbs. You'd be able to use them and it'd be fine.
Yeah.
But those games have this thing that we'll call, I guess we call like strobing, which is a bulb that's supposed to be solidly lit is blinking. And that is an issue on those early solid state Bally and Stearns. And there's a fix for that. That's a board, like a series of little boards that you put into the back box.
Yeah, we have those, the flicker eliminators. We've talked about those, right, Emoto?
Yeah.
Yep.
Totally. Yeah, and you guys sell those, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
You sell them also, right?
What?
Hello.
You guys sell them as well, right?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Oh, and there's a link dropped right in the chat. Thank you.
Oh, nice, perfect. Yeah, so for kits of those games of those eras, we include that board too. It's like, I don't know, $45 to $60, kind of depending on the game. But if you use the board, then you also can just use standard LEDs. You can use whatever LEDs you want in there, so you don't have to get non-ghosting or anything fancy. We I don't know if we still have them, but we had these bulbs called flux bulbs that were supposed to be the fix for that era, and those just weren't. I don't know. They weren't that great. They had a little capacitor in them that would hold a charge so that when it was supposed to flicker, it would stay solid.
Interesting.
But just kind of limiting. And then also there's a new kind of fix for all this too, which is the Yopsicle boards, which you guys
are awesome.
sell and we're gonna have on our site soon. And so those are
awesome.
You would take off the sock, like it takes a little bit of work. You got to lift up the playfield
I've
and
got some right
remove
here.
all of the sockets and replace them with these little LED light boards, like individual ones. But then you don't need, here we go.
I know it's not going to focus, but
It's okay.
Cool. I know.
I've
we did a great episode where Kyle was installing those on what was it, the Strikes and Spares that you did on?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, I know I put a bunch into Strikes and Spares, so I'm pretty sure that is right. But
yeah, and it's It's not difficult. It's a process, but it is not difficult.
No, it's not difficult. Borg Dog, the Yopsicles will not work in lamp matrix games. They are designed to replace lamps and sockets on a classic Bally and Stern games.
Mm-hmm.
For now.
Yep, and thanks for the link, Mitch, in the chat.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
So yeah, there's definitely there is a little bit of learning to do when trying to understand LEDs in lighting and pinball for certain. But part of the gospel that I always preach here is at least replace your general illumination bulbs with a portion of LEDs. To reduce that current draw and stuff like that, on your connectors, be friendly to your plastics and back glasses, etc. But I mean, overall, in general other bits of pinball lighting, right? We've got flash bulbs and stuff like that. You guys have a full line of flashers as well.
Mm-hmm.
Anything special there? There's a couple different flavors you have, right?
Yeah, flashers. We just have sort of these standard flashers that have a flat top. We have ones that have like tower. We have ones with flexible heads.
Well, see, and that's important because to me, LED flashers are evil and they destroy my enjoyment of the game because they are so bright. But the ones with the flexible heads are incredible because you can get the same effect of a flash, but it doesn't have to be directed necessarily towards the player. They can be directed up, sideways, backwards, whatever. I don't know. Do those sell well?
Totally. I think, I mean, I agree with you. Flashers, yeah, LED flashers are evil sometimes. I think some of it is like they're so bright. Some of it is that they come on faster than incandescent ones and go off quicker. And so I know there's some games like, I feel like Walking Dead was one of the first ones that really bugged me where they were just like
strobe.
These lighting effects, like all the lights would go off and then it's like strobing, and you know Dwight was just trying to blind us all, and and it's like
it makes it scary.
It is cool. I guess it's actually, you know, and if you're just playing pinball for fun 100% of the time, well, I mean, we should all be playing pinball but I know like with like at tournaments and those kind of players, we're always like, oh, you know, oh my God, like we could wear sunglasses or something here.
Yeah, and then they can get their pin shades and it reduces the glare too. I mean, you just got to go the full package.
Yeah. So yeah, I think there's some games where we like we had a kit, you know, a kit of bulbs, and people who buy the flasher ones were complaining that the flashers are too bright, particularly ones that are like on the slingshots. There's some games that have bulbs, flasher bulbs, like down kind of where the slingshots are. And so we started putting in like, instead of 8 SMD, which is like 8 diodes, we were using 5 SMD bulbs. And now we kind of have like some dimmer bulbs. Like we have retro flashers that are supposed to be more like the brightness of incandescents.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I want to get some of those and try them. One thing that has always annoyed me is the way that Bally wired their flashers on games like Hardbody and like their 6803 games, is they're all wired in parallel. So if one flasher goes out, the rest of them afterwards are also out. So you can have one flasher out that kills almost all the flash lamps in the game.
Oh, wow.
So being able to replace all of those with a nice dimmer flasher bulb is a headache reducer, I suppose.
Yeah, totally. I know there's definitely some other games, like I think High Speed, there's like some areas kind of in the middle of the playfield where there's like 4 flashers in a row, and those are the same thing. So one of them went out and all the rest of them went out as well.
Yeah. So that's I'll have to try to buy some of those for me too then. Oh yeah, and then Pinball Magician does bring up a important point too. Just when we talk about LED flashers, is on those System 11 games with the resistors for the flashers, so the preheater resistors. You do want to remove those resistors out of the circuit if you're installing LEDs, or else they do bad things. We should do an episode on that. Do I have any System 11
What game? Yeah. Do you have a System 11 game that we can...
I could probably do that on Road Kings. Maybe we can mess with Road Kings, because I think there's someone in the chat that always wants me to do something with Road Kings, and we can make that person really happy by bringing Road Kings.
I'll put it on the list.
Yeah.
Colin Baxter says cool white is still the best color. Can you explain what cool white? I know. I think it was.
You should ban that guy from the chat.
I mean, cool white is nice, but can you explain the difference between cool white and warm white and what other whites you have?
Yeah, we have 3 whites. I would disagree with Colin there, but
very much disagreed with Colin.
Yeah.
Depends on
and actually, I mean, this is another thing where I think, you know, we said, some people who don't like LEDs, I think maybe they just didn't like the way somebody put LEDs into a particular game. So there's 3 whites. Warm white is the warmest white, and it's like basically the color of incandescent bulbs. There's like a scale is it kelvins, right? There's like this,
Yep.
yeah. So it's like from 0 kelvins to like what 8 or 9,000, something like that. And so that's like the white scale. For us, like warm white is I think like around 3,000 kelvins, and incandescence might have even been more like 2,700 to 3,000, something like that. So we have that, and then on the other end is cool white, which is more like 6,000, and it's like so cool white is sort of like almost a little blue maybe, and I think it's just kind of harsh. It's like if you ever
like a doctor's
hear
office.
somebody say like hospital lighting,
Yeah.
like in a hospital,
It's
like
daylight.
it's just like bright and like stale and kind of pale and whatever. So and a lot of people would say that the artwork for these games, they were designed, the older games anyway, designed for incandescent bulbs. And so if you're putting like a cool white bulb in there, it's just whatever, pay a little. It's sort of like, I think, pulling some of the color out of the original artwork. But that's just me. And then in between is sunlight, which is like, I don't know, 4,000 Kelvin, and that one is just like a balance between warm and cool. And so like when we make kits for games, we have at least one game that is cool, uses cool white for the GI, and that's Tron, because that's just like a very
makes sense.
blue game, like kind of cold game. But and then like warms will like I don't know, like reds and yellows, like AC/DC. That's a game that we use warm white on. And then for games that kind of have a lot of different things going on, different color schemes, we'll often use sunlight for that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And this is one of those things that you'll get a million different answers from a bunch of people. And it also doesn't matter what any of us say, because it's your game and you can do whatever you want. But
of course, yeah.
I think the using the backlighting to accentuate specific bits of the artwork, or to accentuate the artwork itself, is a huge power of also being able to use LEDs. I mean, just for example, I mean, I've worked on hundreds of Twilight Zones over the past 12 years, right? And it's always fun for me to put LEDs into those games, where I'll generally do fun things. And like even on my own Twilight Zone I have at home, behind the door, that bright white, eerie door that Rod Serling is standing in front of, putting cool whites behind there is kind of neat. It accentuates that bright white.
Nice.
Putting some cool whites perhaps behind the logo for the title of the game, behind Twilight Zone, accentuates it pretty good. But if you're putting a bright white hospital light bulb behind the gumball machine, or any of the other bits of artwork, it's kind of off-putting. So to me, being able to kind of mix and match is fun, because it allows you to, kind of paint your own canvas for an artwork that already exists, maybe. But, different strokes for different folks, for sure.
Yeah, totally. And that's, I think everybody's tendency in the beginning with LEDs, and mine was to like use as many different colors as possible, in the GI. Like, okay, well, this is a purple plastic over here, I'm going to put purple behind that, and this one's red, I'm going to put red behind that. And that, you do you, and that totally works. That often, to me, makes the game darker. Like, okay, yeah, you have these different colors, and it's like moodier and darker, and maybe that's what you want, but I'm like really serious as a player, and so like I want to be able to see, that's my priorities, like be able to see the ball. And so I think it's really if you want to get really like artsy, it's interesting to try and do that with different whites. And so I know like we sell a Judge Dredd kit, and that game has like something like 12 bulbs in the GI or something. It's hardly has any. A lot of games have like 30. And so, but that game has like 30 bulbs in the back glass. It has a ton. And so this was one of the earlier games that I did a kit for. And in that game, I used all 3 different whites in the back glass in different places, and I used like, one purple bulb and like one, red bulb for this thing, and it came out really nice. And so that'd be my recommendation if you're trying to get artsy, is like try it with different whites. Like if it's a really harsh white thing, like the door panel on Twilight Zone, yeah, use cool whites, and then figure out for the warmer plastics, use warm, and sunlight. And it's pretty rewarding, I think, to do that too. Like you can just be simple, put one bulb everywhere, but to try and like tweak it a little bit is really fun.
That's awesome. It reminds me, when thinking of you doing it on the backglass, behind the backglass, reminds me of the light brights. Our generation really paid off for having light brights, because I wasn't like instinctually thinking like, change the different colors of the whites. I would just be like, there's all my warm whites, I'm putting it all there. But actually looking at the art and seeing which lights accentuate each, and that's brilliant.
Yeah, it's neat. It's fun to do, and it's crazy the differences you can get by using different whites behind different colors. I need to experiment a little more with the sunlight white bulbs. I'm excited to try some of those, because that's I'm a warm white, just everything. For every 100 bulbs I order, 75 are warm white and 25 are cool. But the sunlight ones are interesting, and I'd also like to try the retro bulbs. So as we continue to talk about LEDs, you've kind of got two bases, right? You've got, or not base like literal bases, but you've got frosted bulbs and unfrosted bulbs, uncapped bulbs perhaps. So can you explain in your expertise the difference between a frosted and non-frosted bulb or something? This is probably getting like a little picky or particular, and our philosophy has changed a little bit over time, and some of that has to do with kits. Like we started doing things one way, and then we kind of changed to another way. So I like frosted bulbs. I use mostly frosted bulbs in GI. One of the reasons for that is it spreads the light, it diffuses the light best, sort of, and like spreads it evenly, I guess I would say. And then there's some places it like depends on the game, and it depends a lot actually on your height also, as to whether or not you can see bulbs directly with your eye. Like they're under a plastic, but there's a little crack and you can see it with your eye. And particularly like single level playfield games from like 70s, 80s, and earlier, up around the back, sort of like the arch up at the top, that you plunge to in the top lanes, there'll be like bulbs that you can just see there with your eyes. And so I like to use frosted for that. If you use clear, and Kyle was kind of saying this, but most of our bulbs have like a cap on them, and so just like a little cap, and the cap is frosted or the cap is clear, and there are some that don't have caps. The clear ones. Okay, yeah.
It's okay, yeah.
I'm looking at my phone, but I'm on delay. Yeah, there you go.
It's very blurry, but it's awesome.
It has a cap.
Yeah. And okay, so if you, totally up to you. So I like frosted. If you use clear bulbs, clear lenses, we can also call them lenses. If you use a clear lens there, then one thing is it's probably just going to be brighter in some places with like the direct line of sight to your eye, if there are any spots like that in your game. And then they also, the way the light diffuses is different. It just sort of like, it kind of projects more straight upwards, and it creates like these halos. So they're kind of like these rings, like different shapes of rings, kind of like different sort of colors of whites, like some blues and almost some red hues that they're pretty minor, but I don't know, if you're picky and you look at it, you look at the plastic and there's a clear bulb under there in your GI, like, so you might have these halos. And sometimes actually it's cool to use that for an effect, like in the back glass where there's like stars, or I don't know, there's other
Huh.
places where like the artwork kind of makes it cool to have some kind of like extra, it's like you're creating like some kind of like haloing or like a lens flare or whatever, intentionally. So that's that for
Nice.
frosted, for the general illumination. um, and it's pretty noticeable in the back box too, actually. Like, we used to use two SMDs, which is sort of like the standard brightness. That's what Stern has been using in their games for the last 8 or 9 years. Two SMD bulbs. They mostly use clear bulbs, so that is maybe sometimes why like the lighting seems harsher, I think, to some people. But in the back box, you will particularly notice like halos. Like sometimes just the socket is pretty close to the artwork there, and so there's that. So we used to use frosted in the inserts under the playfield, but we switched a few years ago in our kits to using clear bulbs, and the reason was because of the way the light is diffused by the frosted bulbs. Sometimes you would have, if you're playing a game where the insert actually blinks during gameplay to indicate something, it would like bleed into adjacent inserts that were nearby. So if you had three locks real close to each other, and the
Gotcha.
first one was blinking and it was a frosted bulb, it would like spread that illumination to lock two a little bit. So it would look like it was ghosting or something. So we switched to using clear bulbs because it just goes more straight up. And with the inserts, like the inserts already like have their own pattern and their own diffusion or something, so there's not haloing or that kind of thing.
I think that's always my biggest
Nice.
complaint about a non-frosted cap bulb is that pinpointiness and the halo effect, I guess. Um, I think I need to expand my horizons and try some other things like you're talking about. It must be very fun to have all of that at your disposal and then like shop out a game and put a bunch of LEDs into a game when you have it all right at your fingertips.
Yeah,
I
totally.
think because I'm boring, I really am just all about the added brightness, the similar color temperature, etc., of using the warm white frosted bulbs. But there's absolutely, just listening to you talk about that, there's so many other ways I could be using the non-frosted versions as well. Now it's kind of like
Yeah,
thinking about it, like, huh.
totally. And there's some other things too. Like, there are games. Trying to think, like, T2 is a game that has this, and High Speed is a game that has this, where there's a bank, like a three bank, kind of right in the middle, and with a plastic over it, and then like GI bulbs, and those are kind of like shine right into your eyes, no matter what you do potentially. And so we have bulbs that have a flexible head on them, and so we'll do that too. We'll like replace that bulb with one with the flexible head, and then point the head away from the player, but like sort of up and away so that it illuminates the plastic, but it's out of your eyes.
So that's definitely, or like
Taking to the next
hiding
level.
LEDs is something I do a lot. Like I put LEDs in my electromechanical games, and that's fine. You can hate me. Everyone that doesn't like that can hate me. I don't care, but I do.
I don't think people hate on that anymore like they did back when you were saying when LED technology for the
Well,
pinball machines weren't as good.
I think
I don't hear
like,
that angry purist anymore because, like you said, like replacing the GI to help so your game doesn't overheat and stuff like that. I think everyone's kind of got on the bandwagon.
I think there's more voices in the pool now, and the people that were angry about that are being drowned out a little bit, but there's still a lot of people that don't. And look, to me, like Ryan's saying, I'm not a tournament player, but I prefer to have a game that's well lit. And
Right.
electromechanical games are not very well lit. Adding a nice LED with a frosted cap is a great way to add some light to traditionally dark spots on a game. That being said, when if I'm trying to refurbish a game for a customer, or if it's one of my own games, such as some of my EMs and games I will be working on soon, a lot of the times I'll put LEDs all over the place, but if I have a line of sight as to where a bulb is, I'll keep an incandescent bulb there, but I will splatter the LEDs all over the other bits to get that, the extra light, but to, keep the eyes sane. I don't know. Sorry, the chat is going insane. It is so distracting. Thank you, everyone who has subscribed in the last 5 minutes. All of you are super rad, and I'm glad that this is bringing out Steve and Colin Baxter wanting to beat each other up on a playground because Steve likes the correct color light bulb in their pinball
The correct one. Oh.
Anyways, another thing I was thinking about too is like other ways that I've squeezed LEDs into a game. And like if I'm working on a game but a customer hadn't specifically told me, it's like, yes, I want you to add a lot of LEDs to my game, thus increasing the cost of the bill or whatnot. But like every time I'll see like a bulb that is actually burnt out, like on the insert panel on Baywatch here, I just put a couple LEDs up there, and we'll mess with the white balance to kind of show these. But like every time I find like a burnt out bulb, I'll just replace it with an LED. Some things I've noticed also sometimes using 2 SMD frosted warm white bulbs, they're way too bright. And if you were to stuff like every game, like I think we learned this on my roller games, if you stuff every single lamp socket in the insert for roller games with this bulb, it's insanely bright. I was able to, let's just say there's 30 bulbs, I was able to fill 18 sockets and have the same amount of illumination that the incandescents were to provide than using every single lamp socket. Ways to also economize pinball lighting, right? Not only are you using less power and you're creating less heat, you can also use almost 50% bulbs, which saves you money. Now I see people on the internet starting fights here.
Should we talk about some things that came up here in chat?
Yeah, please talk about. I'm gonna do like 50% LEDs in the Baywatch back glass while you talk about the chat.
Okay, I have a couple things. So Pinball Magician said, mix some blue on the left and red on the light in Pinbot. That I've seen that on some Pinbots where people will do like half the, usually I'm all about like white LEDs kind of everywhere in the GI, but I've seen Pinbots where it's like half blue and half red, and that's kind of cool. And I've seen some people will do that with Tron too. They make like a blue side and a yellow side it's a cute touch. Roller Pinball asked about the tradition of Comet Pinball including candy in the orders. That was the previous owner, Art. I don't know how he started that, but he that was his thing, and we just were too afraid to stop it. We just kept it going. And
it's good luck. I was gonna say you can't stop that.
No, it's a good. I mean, it's. Do
you use the same candy Art used too, like those little?
I think it's like similar. We end up a lot of times now we'll get like kind of this bulk sort of candy where we have a rough idea of what's in it, but not totally. And so that's like a cool tradition. I know there's some people out there who like don't want candy and they get really annoyed about it. And we don't have a great system for like preventing candy from going in always. We're working. We're working. I don't know. I think maybe they just, they're tempted by candy, and so if it shows up, they have to eat it, and then they.
Yeah.
That's my guess. So kind of everybody generally gets candy. We can't. We don't send it internationally, so that's a little bit of a bummer, but that's all right. So Jim from YouTube asked about the bulb kit for Revenge from Mars. Okay, so this was something that we kind of worked on in the last year or two, and it was a real pain. That game, so that's a Pinball 2000 game. There's only kind of 2 of them, that and Star Wars Episode 1. A lot of people have been asking about it, so we made one, and then we just weren't really happy with it. And there's a few reasons for that. One is that that game has different. That game will tell you when any bulb is out.
There's no GI in that game.
There's no what?
There's no general illumination in that game.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
That's right. So there's no GI. There's two switch matrices, I think. So there's like potentially like 128 individually controlled lights. And it knows when a light bulb is out. I believe that's like the only game ever that I've seen that in the like you can go into the service menu and it will tell you this particular bulb
Capcom
is
does
out.
that also.
Okay.
Technically, there's no GI in a Capcom game. Actually, I think Pinball 2000 there is GI, but they have those voltage monitoring bits technology.
Okay. All right. So yeah, this is great. Kyle can fill in my gaps in the knowledge here. So one of the things is when you put LEDs in there, it will just tell you that the bulb is out, even when it's not. And maybe Kyle, you can explain why that is, but maybe you don't know. Okay.
Smart people stuff that I'm not qualified to talk about.
I think maybe they're like expecting a particular draw or something, and because LEDs are just, no, I don't know. I'm not even going to try and explain.
No, I mean, I think that is it. I mean, like the best way that I could explain it, and I think this is how they do it, is it is looking for a certain amount of draw on each circuit. And since an LED draws maybe 15%, 10% of the same amount of current that an incandescent bulb does, it basically is it above 50%? Okay, it's on. Is it below 50% of the prescribed current draw? It's off, right? So.
Yeah. Okay. That sounds right. And then the other more damning thing, even about Revenge from Mars, is that game relies on reflection. You know, there's a monitor above the playfield that projects an image onto the glass of the pinball machine, and you interact with that. And so when we put LEDs in there, it was kind of ruining that effect. Like the back of that game is very dark and you're like, I can't see. But when you brighten it up with LEDs, now you can see the hardware under the glass. You can see the ramps and everything, but you can't see the reflection of the screen.
Yeah. The projected
as
image.
Well. Yeah. So we have this. So we initially like made kind of a full kit for Revenge from Mars, and then didn't like it. So now we have like what's called like a supplemental kit, and it just has a handful of bulbs. It mainly uses them down by the slingshots and the flippers, and it illuminates that area, but it leaves the back dark so that you can still see the monitor and interact with it.
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, I guess if you were to actually brighten up the back of one of those games, you would lose that entire effect, huh?
Yeah. Totally. Zachi, I'm not quite sure. Maybe I'll have to go back and read that more about your Xenon thing first.
Oh, I saw that comment earlier. If that person is still in the chat, if you have feature lamps out on your Bally game, start at the source, move forward. Well, actually, start with the easy stuff and then move forward. Look at your connectors on going to the lamp driver board, hold them up, and see if the little pins inside are blocking the window. Those little small pins in those connectors do have a habit of breaking after being used for 40-something years. If they are not blocking the window, the little hole in the connector, and they're snapped, it could be as simple as a broken pin. The next thing to double check would be, well, this is also assuming you've changed the light bulb and you've made sure that the socket isn't lazy. There's plenty of things to read about lazy lamp sockets in Bally games, etc. If you've done all that, check the connector. Also remove the lamp driver board and check for cracked solder on the back of the lamp driver board. If you have a little bit of cracked solder there, you will also not get a lamp. So the easiest way to do that, or the first things to do though, are definitely, is the light bulb burnt out? Is the light socket getting lazy and crabby? Go to PinWiki, there's a great description on how to do it as effectively as possible. So, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's cool. That was great. Thank you. I'm just still catching up on chat here. Jim asked if we have a bulb kit for Baywatch. We do, and if you go to our site, there's a search box many years ago, our old search box kind of sucked, but the new one is good. So if you type in the name of a game you're looking for, it'll come right up if we have a kit for it. PDX Pinball says, I like to use clear pink LEDs for orange inserts. This is like super cool, and it took me years to figure this one out. But I was like in doing orange inserts, particularly like 90s Bally Williams ones, I was having a really hard time when making kits, like trying to get the color to match with LEDs. The color that comes through when it's incandescent versus LEDs, I was like just not getting it. Sometimes I couldn't figure it out. And but yeah, pink behind an orange insert is actually like the best match, I think, for the exact like incandescent coloring, which is pretty cool.
Because I've always used, I think it was either yellow or red behind oranges, and then orange behind red, and that seemed to give a good pop. Maybe I'm getting that backwards, but that's I'm gonna have to try that. That's really cool.
Yeah, pink is cool. Yeah, there was a time where we were doing yellow for orange. I think maybe that's right. Yellow for orange and orange for red. Yeah, maybe. And now I think sometimes we're doing pink and sometimes we're doing warm white or sunlight. The yellows, yellow has kind of been like the weak link, I think, for pinball LEDs. Like you buy a yellow one and then you get it and it's just orange. It's possible that might be something that we've been working on. I don't know. I don't actually know where that stands, but like getting a better actual yellow color. But there's some bulbs. I mean, if you've never done LEDs, I think blue is like the biggest improvement. You have like a blue insert and you put a blue bulb behind it. Yeah. Those blue inserts that they've been using for years are just I don't know. They're just sort of like pale and not that great. But with a blue LED behind it, they're
super rich.
Really come out strong. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're the expert on it, but but like in my experience, like color matching inserts isn't always. It doesn't have like an exponential beautifying effect, but there are some colors that are just like so insane. Like the blues you're talking about are using, I guess, pink behind orange. I mean, that's cool. In certain games with like different color schemes too, like I'll bring my Twilight Zone back into it, but like, the color palette of that game is a lot of dark blues and blacks, but like using cool white LEDs behind the clear inserts is just very striking, and it's super
it's intense.
It looks pretty good in that aspect, where before they're very dingy and yellow looking. I don't know.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing to try too. If you just as a way to mess around with LEDs and color and stuff is just like take 4 white inserts next to each other and leave one incandescent, make one cool white sunlight, one warm white, and you see what it looks like.
Yeah, that's the fun of pinball and LEDs. Like, they're
so much color science involved with it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Hey, Emoto, while Ryan is looking
Kyle,
at the
it's
chat...
a bit of a tangent, but can you answer Pinball Wiz's question that's up there on the screen?
That's what I was just looking at.
Do you see?
Issue with the right ramp,
Game of Thrones issue with the right ramp.
You can read it. Your voice is better than mine.
What did you say? Okay, Game of Thrones issue. Thanks for asking the question, Pinball Wiz. Always feel free to ask any repair questions in our chat, and we'll get to them when we can. So he asked, Game of Thrones issue with the right ramp exit opto. Cleaned them. They're triggered when they're not supposed to. Alignment issue or needs replacing?
Tug on the wires in the back and make sure that the wires have not become disconnected from the PCB. That's a common occurrence. Sometimes the wires will unsolder themselves from the solder blob. And if the wire is kind of floating there between touching and not touching, it can issue like a false positive. The modern Stern opto switches use a visible light. You can see them, right? Wait. With a cell phone. Yeah. No, Williams used infrared light that you needed special things to see. The modern Stern and Sega LEDs, I believe, you can see with your own fingers. No, not a cell phone. You can see infrared light with a cell. Sorry, I'm talking to Steve. You can see infrared light with a cell phone, but
So you think just putting your finger there?
I think some of them.
In a dark enough room.
Look, I'll be honest. I don't remember which ones that those early Spike games used. Thinking about it, like the last opto repair I had to do was on an X-Files, and that uses visible light. I don't remember if Game of Thrones uses visible or invisible light, or infrared light. But I mean, just first ensure that it's putting out infrared light or visible light. I would check the wires first. If they're activating when they're not supposed to, generally optos are normally closed. When a ball passes through it, it triggers an open switch, and that's what the computer can read. So if it's going from being off to on, that's going to trigger it to do things when it's not supposed to. Check there first. Sometimes that can be a problem.
Yeah.
Ryan, as an operator, are you also a technician? Like you work on games a lot?
Yeah, it's been
You
mostly
don't look
me.
so happy about that. You're supposed to be like, yeah, I do.
I do, yeah. Yeah, no, it's yeah, it is fun sometimes, and then sometimes it's not fun. But it's not fun. It's not fun like when a game is down and you can't figure it out, and it's down a flight of stairs and it's in a location that's open all the time, and you know it can be hard to get somebody else to come, and help out sometimes. So yeah, it has been mostly me working on my games. It depends who I'm comparing myself to. If I'm comparing to somebody who like does house calls for a living, I don't know what I'm doing. But for somebody who's just got their first machine, like usually I can help out, even just in a conversation and tell them what to look for. I was going to say about the optos. Optos are like kind of a thorn in my side generally. Like micro switches and regular kinds of switches is just easy. They're easier to diagnose and fix. And optos, there's a lot of different things it can be. And the fact that when a switch is broken, it doesn't work. And when an opto is broken, it triggers. It's triggering all the time instead of just doing nothing like a regular broken switch. And that'll really mess things up particularly if it's involved in counting the number of balls in the machine. I don't know if this impacts Game of Thrones, but a lot of the like Stern games from the say 10 years before Game of Thrones, for sure, there are issues with the opto boards. Like there's a little board that lives screwed under the playfield, and they're pretty cheap to replace. But if you have a game that's like, a lot of the times like the opto is just working fine, and then suddenly it triggers like 100 times in a second, that usually, in my experience, has meant to just buy this new board. You can find them for like $10 and hook up the optos and work again. So if you ever like see a Wheel of Fortune where somebody has like 500 million point grand champ, it's because there was a problem with the ramp opto, and yeah.
No, I worked so hard for that score.
It can be hard to troubleshoot.
Tim always said the switch is registering on the DMD, and when it hits the rubber at the end of the ramp, that causes it to register.
So yeah, that's probably, I would say, like Kai was saying, that's probably something that's loose. Probably the wire to either of the one of the wires on either opto is probably loose, or cold solder, it needs to be redone, or maybe even the diode itself needs to be resoldered. Probably.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's another thing too. Yeah, the diodes that solder into the boards, they can crack, get cold solder joints on the boards also. Remember, always look at the easy stuff first, or not easy stuff, but the cheap stuff, the free stuff first. You've already done like 2 of the free things. Now do the next couple free things, and you might find your problem right there.
Hopefully, yeah.
Yeah, so I've had my favorite opto. This kind of like goes into LEDs because optical switches are LEDs. At the Pacific Pinball Museum, we had a AC/DC that was on the coin-operated side. So it was in the front of the museum towards the window. Right when people walk in, there's like 4 games that you could pay money to play instead of going to free play the museum, right? And there would be complaints all the time of the game spitting out balls when it shouldn't. And we would have our fix-it nights on Monday nights. A bunch of guys would show up at like 7 o'clock on a Monday. We'd work for 3 or 4 hours, fix all the games in the museum, and then leave happy knowing that all 100 games were working. This damn complaint kept coming up over and over and over and over and over again. I was like, there's no problem. This person is high. There's no problem with this game. And one day I showed up maybe around noon, maybe around 1 or 2 o'clock. Now, mind you, the museum's front window is facing west. And there was just the right amount of light that would come in around 1 or 2 o'clock at an angle through the window, shining into the out-hole trough area where the sun was activating a bunch of these trough optos, and the game was just spitting out bazillions of balls for just a few minutes.
That's awesome. It's like,
and it was one of those things where I was just like, damn it. And so
and you're checking everything, and it's really just
I moved AC/DC to the end of the row, and I put all of the old Bally games next to the window. The problem never happened again. It was one of those things that I always bring up to be like, you think that you may have exhausted every single option, but if the problem keeps coming up, there is a problem, no matter how many times you say there isn't one. Yes, CNK says, spoiler alert, sunlight issue. Yes. It can definitely happen. Anywho, Emoto, can you, like, for giggles, can you mess with like the white balance or whatever on the handheld camera, and can you see if you can like make it all the light bulbs don't look like blobs?
They're blobs.
Well, this actually...
and then while I'm doing that, Jim wanted to know how he was talking about his revenge from Mars when we were talking about that earlier. You told him to check the varistor inside the switch box. Can you describe to him how to do that?
I can do that, but really quick. Look at this image really quick that's up on the screen. Before you mess with it much, Emoto.
Oh, too late.
Actually, that's fine too.
Okay.
This is great. Look at this really quick. So this is kind of like almost skipping every other bulb, LED versus incandescent. And look at how the color temperature. This is why I
want to make
love
it big.
these bulbs so much.
Wait. Yeah. Okay.
This is why these are the best. You've got, like, this is an incandescent bulb. This is an incandescent bulb. That one is. That's an LED. That's an LED. You can tell because the LEDs are a lot more even and they spit out a lot more light. But look at the color, right? That color temperature between the incandescent and the LED bulbs.
Look, when they're completely out of focus, then can you tell which ones are which?
Oh, yeah.
The intensity is very similar.
That's why. Cool. That is why That's why these are. This is why warm white is the best, and this is why they are my preferred bulb.
Because it matches closest to incandescent.
But they're so much brighter. I was kind of throwing the translight on and off of this game to see where I need to put more bulbs or where I should maybe remove an LED and put an incandescent back. But now we are left with a better lit, less spotty background. Well, it looks terrible now because Emoto. Emoto, can you mess with that a little bit to make it look right again?
Well, but look, you can see where. Oh, yeah. So you have the B at Baywatch, the Y, W, and the H kind of lit.
Well, okay, so I think this is also another thing.
Higher than the others.
Data East was kind of
a good way of being able to track.
Data East was addicted to flashers, which is just awful. So it's actually not easy to light Baywatch very brightly with.
Oh, there we go.
Incandescence, because there's like a flasher here and then a flasher here, so it's kind of uneven. But Williams and Bally did a much better job of like pinpointing like light sockets to make them light things that they wanted to be lit better. And again, like, it's really difficult to show off how nice LEDs look in photos because generally the photo sensor in a camera will pick up like really bright spots. Like looking at this, like in real life, David Hasselhoff does not have a gigantic like white spot illuminating out of his forehead, but on the camera it looks really awful.
Orange.
But in real life, it is very natural looking and it's not super spotty. So a lot of the times, again, it's like, it just depends on how picky you are. I like the look here that I've achieved with using 50% LEDs in the back box. Under the playfield, or on the playfield general illumination, I will use every single spot with a new bulb, an LED bulb. They just look a lot better the brighter they are, but different strokes for different folks. But Colin Baxter's wrong, and cool white is not the best. So, sorry.
What about sunlight?
I would say, to Colin's credit, we do, I think, still sell more cool whites than either of the other two, which always surprises me.
Yeah.
I think, I'm always like a warm white or a sunlight guy, but
we sell more cool whites too. Like looking at the data of how many of the Comet bulbs we've sold over the last 5 months, we've outsold cool white to not. But I think it's just because people are ignorant and they need to be taught that the warm whites look a lot better in their pinball machines, and that is our job to spread the gospel.
It's a color science.
When I took over Comet, the cool whites were called natural whites.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure, that was just the way that Art named them, and I was like really reluctant to change because I didn't want I didn't want people to get confused. And then finally I was like, no, I want people to know these are the cool ones. And then I assumed that when we changed the name, like we would start selling less of them, but that didn't happen.
Oh, do you think they did cool whites because, they wanted the cool lights, like you are a cool person?
Yeah, they wanted the hip ones, yeah.
The hip lights, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think there's a thing with the color too. When you're putting that like 6,000 Kelvin, that super white, it does have a lot of tint of blue that we know because of the color theory and everything. But to the human eye, it's just like this pure white light. So I think it's like the idea of that hitting the playfield colors and stuff, it pops those colors out in maybe a way that the artist didn't intend, but it's making those colors look very vibrant and saturated because of the way that cooler light hits it.
Can you adjust the I put a cool white bulb in here. I actually found one on my desk.
Okay.
But just it's again, look at this is like preaching to the choir. You're never going to change anybody's opinions on this, but it's just, look at again, this isn't
Right, but look, if I change the white balance of my camera,
it's basically blue, and
let's go.
When I look at
so that's 6,000 on the camera, so you can see that's where it becomes white. But if you go down, you can see the blue hues more.
And let's do it this way, right?
At 3,200 Kelvin.
So this is a warm white LED. This is a number 44 incandescent bulb, and this is a Comet cool white 2 SMD bulb here. Now, tell me that putting that behind David Hasselhoff would just look absolutely unnatural, right?
Maybe he wouldn't have a tan.
Just saying. I don't know.
Much. He needs a little bit of orange tan.
It's hey man, it's your game. You can do whatever you want, but I definitely think that, like Emoto was saying, the way that these are lit with the artist's choice of colors, etc., to me, they look better this way. Now, I think to settle this debate, all of us can agree that like 5 different colors in the GI is bad. That's a bad look. No greens and blues and purples and oranges. No, just one color. Just keep it.
Well, I do agree with that statement. At my arcade, there was like a closet, so that used to have like a drink, what do you call it, soda machine in it. And I realized, hey, there were a pinball machine would fit in this. So I took this drink machine out and put a pinball machine in there.
Nice.
And the machine is total nuclear annihilation. And so there's like a curtain and it's closed. And so you don't even necessarily know the game is there when you walk by, and then you find it later. But the volume is really loud, and there's like a galaxy like sky sort of like lasers projected onto the ceiling, and that game has really like crazy awesome lighting. That's a game where like it changes all the GI to totally different colors, blues and greens, and I don't like that stuff to be just static, say blues or greens or reds in the GI all the time. But the way TNA does it with changes in the gameplay, it's really cool.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, but I think your key word there is the static bit, right? Just constantly having what people refer to as the clown puke or whatnot. But again, on this show, I always try not to I try to preface my opinions with opinion. A lot of this that we're talking about is opinion, and it's the way I do things. It's not the way you need to do things, but.
Yeah, and you and I probably are working on games that are, being enjoyed by a larger group of people. So, like my games are all on location, and, that's a different thing that in a dark arcade, and that's different than if it's just in your basement and,
Sure.
you're the only one playing it, or just a few friends.
Sure, yeah.
So does this product exist where you can have these little LED bulbs like the hue lights, where now I have put all the bulbs in it, and then now I'm using my phone to select what color with the color wheel?
Somebody was just talking to me about that the other day and how it should be possible. I don't know. I haven't looked into that. Maybe, I suppose, if the components are small enough that they can fit into the base of a bulb, maybe we would see that.
I can't imagine they would be that small, but that would be a total game changer.
I don't know. Are there any electrical engineers out there? Can we have something that's that small? That would be pretty interesting, and you'd probably almost need some custom software on your phone so that you could, select each bulb, and it would be that would be cool.
Be nuts.
Maybe you need to call GE. Get GE involved in the pinball business or something.
You'd have to be really careful with that too, and maybe charge $1,000 a bulb, because then if they never change, and you can change them to whatever color you want,
right.
Everyone just buys a set of their 40 and they're done.
Yeah. Well, we joke about maybe how every few years we should just change all our lighting theory. A few years from now, we're going to say, man, clown puke is the way to go. You got to have 20 different colors.
Back purple pinball.
Yeah, and yep.
Absolutely. No, that's a great idea.
Something you can do for now in terms of that is, and this is something we could do a better job about with our products and education, is you could, with our matrix stuff, you could hook up something to say oh, when this bulb turns on, when the green light lock is on, something else comes on. You have a spotlight, or you have a strip, that comes on, and so you can make sort of interactive mods like that to change lighting color, even though that wasn't part of the original game.
Yeah, that's awesome.
The world is your oyster when it comes to lighting and pinball.
It is pretty daunting. Do you have any advice for someone that's it just seems like such a hefty task. I look at my pinball machine, I'm I'm going to change all of these, and then I'm okay, well, but I can add different colors. Now I'm just so overwhelmed that I don't even want to make the purchase, because at least those bulbs are still working. Why would I want, it's kind of intimidating.
Totally. The easiest way would be to buy a kit from us for a game. We have kits for, I think, about 100 games right now, and for the most part, it's sort of the most popular games that are out there. If there's something that you want that we don't have, you can email us, and usually we'll say we don't have it, but we might someday, and we'll let you know. And if enough people have requested something over time, we'll that'll motivate us to make it more. So if it's one of those 100 games, you just buy the kit. it arrives and all of the things are sort of like all of the bulbs are kind of bagged with other bulbs like it, and right on the bag it will say where those bulbs go. And so it's pretty, we've changed like the process of how our kits work. It used to be the spreadsheet and you'd have to like cross-reference, and now you just grab a bag and it tells you where those bulbs go and you put them in.
Oh, cool.
So that would be that's the easiest thing. I mean, the next easiest thing is, oh, and I should also say about our kits, like, I mean, I see people online all the time asking for advice and say like, I'm just going to buy a kit. And then a bunch of other people will jump in and say, oh, don't buy the kit. Like, that's stupid. You pay more money and then like, you don't get to decide, you know, how it looks. There's a lot of kits out there that use like a lot of colors in the GI, or they used to be anyway. And so ours is just like, it's just going to be like clean white for the GI, and the bulbs for the inserts are going to be different colors. The greens are going to be greens and the reds are going to be reds. But it's not like, you know, it's sort of, we've made smart and simple aesthetic choices, and nothing too crazy. And it takes, and we do charge, it will cost you more to get a kit than if you bought the bulbs individually, but our markup is, you know, like we have to do the work of making them, and we make all these labels and we try and make it easy for you. So like,
it's a convenience for us as a consumer, to where I don't have to think about all of that now.
Totally. If it's worth 20 extra bucks to not have to spend an hour or two or more just even counting up the bulbs, figuring out where they are, then do that. And the next thing is, if you really don't want a kit, you could just buy just all 2 SMD. Like if you just wanted one bulb to rule them all, I would say it's like a frosted 2 SMD sunlight bulb, and just buy a bunch of those. And for your game, you will need, most games you'll probably need a combination of wedge and bayonet bulbs. Mm-hmm. Like wedges are 555s, bayonets are 40. What is it?
4447.
4447. Oh my God, can't believe I forgot that. And so it's like you might have to sort of count or do a rough estimate in your game, but most games are, I don't know, 100, 150 bulbs, maybe a little more than that even. And you could put those bulbs everywhere. You know, you don't have to worry about non-ghosting. You don't have to worry about clear versus frosted. Just like put that all in, and then, I don't know, see how it looks. And then you can be picky, like, oh, this one flickers a little bit, I'll get some non-ghosting bulbs next time, and go from there.
A lot of times,
it's a good tip.
When I was doing a lot of service back in my past life, when people would inquire about LEDs, but they didn't necessarily want to pay me $120 an hour plus LEDs to put them in their game, and they're like, I can do this. I'm like, yes, you absolutely can. Don't make me do it. Well, what should I do? And I would always recommend them to do exactly what you said before. You go to cometpinball.com, purchase 50 of these, 50 of these, 50 of these, 50 of these, put them in your game and see what looks good. And then you can make your little adjustments here and there. In the days of people owning one pinball machine, they're kind of over. Lots of people own many games, and many games mean hundreds and hundreds of bulbs. So just because you've installed it in one game doesn't mean it needs to live there, right? If you've got 3 or 4 games, you can purchase these things, try them out, and then change them around. Make it work the way you want to. If you have a Tron and you put warm white underneath in the playfield GI, and you put cool white underneath something else that it shouldn't be in, and you want to swap them, you totally can. It just takes more time, but it's a great way it's a fun, almost innocent way to modify your pinball machine with very limited chances for you to screw it up, right? So.
Totally.
Yeah.
So I just saw Mutter Futter posted here.
Yeah.
There should be a I'm new to LEDs, just give me bulbs pack. So there sort of is. If you just go to cometpinball.com, you scroll down a little bit. There's a thing called bestsellers. That first one, there are 2 SMD bulbs. that's what I'm talking about. So like I said, if you want one bulb to rule them all, I would say frosted, sunlight, 2 SMD. And the next thing over from that is non-ghosting bulbs, which we talked about if you want to get a little fancy, and then 8 SMD flashers. So if you have a modern game, it probably has flashers. And there's that. And right above that on the site, also on our site, is like, we've got this sort of breakdown for like beginners, operators, mod makers.
I saw that. I really liked that.
And so I don't know, somehow I think I've been too many marketing things in my day, but I was kind of thinking about like personas, and it's like, instead of thinking about what we have, think about who's trying to buy from us. And so if you click on beginner, there's kind of like a little bit deeper than the one bulb to rule them all thing. It talks about LED kits for your game, and then like what should you put in the GI, choosing which kind of white you want, and all that. And so and then down at the bottom are those same bulbs that get mentioned on the page. We also have like a page under resources, and then teach me about. There's 3 different pages: art of LEDs, choosing the right color white, and bulb brightness.
Yeah, those are fantastic. Everyone needs to read those.
If you click on those, the art of LEDs is pretty long. That was I made that a couple of years ago, and it was just like, okay, let me just see if I can think of like everything that I know in terms of theory. And a lot of this also comes from like interactions with customers and questions that people ask, and people like we didn't come up with the pink thing ourselves. That was somebody else. And so
Oh, that's cool. And you guys have like a little sampler pack of bulbs too, right?
Oh, great. That's true. Yeah. So if you go under, let's see.
I think Steve posted it in the chat. The universal.
Cool.
Well,
pinball.
he posted a universal pinball machine LED kit, but I saw you guys have like a sampler of like.
Oh, my bad. Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, that's right. We do have that universal thing. I don't even, it's been a while since
I need to go to my website.
Since I've seen one of those.
You've been traveling the world for too long.
Right, yeah.
Bringing you back to the pinball universe.
I haven't been fulfilling orders mostly. I pretty much just go into fulfill orders during our sale, Black Friday each year. And so I don't even know off the top of my head how often we sell those. Okay, so under all products, there's a thing called, towards the bottom, variety and sample packs. And this is like, so that 250 piece thing that got posted there is on there. There's 150 bulb one. And then there's also this like tiny sampler thing and specialty sampler. And so the tiny sampler has like, I think it's 20 different bulbs, and it's just like a mix of different brightnesses and clear versus frosted and retro and wedge and bayonet. And so you're not gonna find, you can't really like use that for any good purposes, like
just for testing, right? Just to
exactly, yeah. The reason to get that is like, I want to upgrade my pinball LED lighting knowledge, and so buy that, and then you can just see, okay, like, well, I like this color, but maybe not in this brightness, or figuring out which white is for you, and
so you can give that a shot and then say that we're all full of crap and we're wrong, and this color is way better than the warm white that these guys are talking about. Or you can do it and be like, man, a combination of this is right. Yeah, that's really neat.
We had somebody who we had an order for like 20 of those, and we had to reach out to the customer. We're like, you do not want 20.
You don't want to do this.
and they said, oh no, I'm having a party, and I wanted to give everybody like one of these.
That's
such
really
a great
awesome.
Swag pack.
Yeah.
Oh man,
it was pretty cool. But it's like it's the most annoying thing for us to. It's like the most annoying order to pick. It's just like each one bulb per bag gets its own label, and like special printout inside.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Well, good. Then we won't be stocking those. But I'm thinking that I have a pretty convincing. Argument tomorrow. I can go talk to the boss and be like, I think we got to start stocking these sunlight LEDs now. We've been talking about them a lot. I want to try them. I'm thinking
yeah,
that
I thought about whether we should just ignore sunlight because I know you guys don't have them yet, but
No.
cat's out of the bag.
This is all
No,
about
yeah,
talking about
we
your
wanna
stuff.
talk about
We
it.
will definitely
Yeah.
bring them on at some point. And I must say that it has been my life mission since I started working at Marco Pinball to try and stock Comet LEDs.
It really has been since day one, since
So-
like day negative.
It took
I
a
mean,
couple
yeah,
years.
We are very flattered and sort of like, is this real? Like, why did they want to? So it's very, it was a big honor to be approached by you guys about that.
Well, why thank you. But
That's awesome. Yeah.
you don't need to
No, we're
fluff
just
me.
glad
but-
we can help everyone get the type of lighting, the best lighting they need for their games.
Yeah,
And that's great.
absolutely. That's what it's all
Yeah,
about.
we've been working hard over the years, like getting rid of stuff that just like wasn't good enough, making things better. We used to have problems with like the tops would come off of the lenses would come off bulbs sometimes, and so now I think almost all of them have like a notch in them, so they can't spin off like they used to, and there's other stuff like that. Sometimes. If you're out there and like sometimes our wedge bulbs, you gotta like bend the wires a little bit. I don't know if you always do that, Kyle, or not when you're putting in bulbs, but
Yeah, on the wedge-based bulbs.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
We've
bend
talked
them
about
out a
that,
little.
right? About it where we pull
Yeah,
the
yeah,
we
you
pull
did
the
talk
edges out.
about that.
Yeah.
That's why I know. PinTech school.
So yeah, I don't know how you like the wires would be kind of like this, and you would bend them
Yeah.
sort of
they
out
have
a little bit like
better
that,
connection.
and then stick them in the socket, and they'll work a little bit better. I just always do that now as a habit when I'm installing bulbs.
What's the Mr. Intergalactic bulb?
That should commemorate the peak of my pinball tournament career. When I at the last Pinburg, the side tournament there was an intergalactic championship, and
Okay,
so
sounded
that.
familiar.
So I was fortunate enough to win that tournament, and that will be. I'm never going to top that. Probably, it was like 500 or 600 players, and usually my MO is do pretty well, and then as soon as the streaming camera gets on me, I just like forget how to play pinball. And it happened in Australia actually. I was up 2-0 against Steve Bowden in a best of 5. And he came back on his last ball of no fear, and then we got to game 5. It's Avengers, and I needed like 60 million. I had 2 multi-balls ready, and I accidentally short plunged, no flips, didn't even touch the ball, and like all these people watching, and yeah.
No, it happens.
Yeah.
It happens.
Wait,
And that
so
was not the
you
first
made
time
a-
that I've done that too.
You made a bulb based off of.
No, he's just.
Oh,
I don't
he's
know,
just referencing it. I
flattering
thought maybe
me,
you
yeah.
had a product on there that was like a special bulb to commemorate your giant
No,
Pinburg win.
I don't have it here, but
I
oh
guess
my
it
god,
needs
the
to be, yeah.
trophy is so cool. It's like this welded metal like pinball machine that's I don't know 2 feet wide, and I don't know.
Oh, that's
yeah.
awesome.
It's really cool.
There are a lot of really wacky bulbs that you guys do sell, though. Right? Can you go
Yeah.
off on some of the goofy, fun bulbs that you sell?
That's
Let's
what I
see.
figured it was.
Okay, let me go to. Let me see if this is here. Before I say we still have it. So there is. Do we have this in stock? There's this thing called the RGB multi-fade cob.
Yeah.
So if you're on our site and you go down the list of products to effects bulbs and then RGB color changing, there's a little video of it there. And when we took over, there were a lot of like weird sort of one-off bulbs that we had, and that's one of them
Nice.
that we still have for some reason. And I wonder if we still have the like. Oh yeah, there's that. Let's see. So the under like 12 volt bulbs, there's kind of some like some weirder ones in there. We have these fire bulbs or like flame bulbs, and so it's 4 different colors, and it kind of like rotates and supposed to kind of look like a fire.
They're so cool.
Yeah, and those are cool. I mean, I never saw the video. I don't know, but there was a customer who said they were doing their entire Black Knight machine with fire bulbs.
Oh my
Like 30, just like
Hell yeah, that's awesome.
But some people will use them like there's a lot of like one-off places to use them. Like there's a lot of back glasses with like fires or candles, like Scared Stiff has a candle, or like there's a lot of EMs that have like rocket ship, exhaust, and that's pretty cool. And people love those so much that they were asking for blue ones, so we have like a blue flame now.
Sweet.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool.
Those things are rad. I like those bulbs. I have a couple just for the lulz, but they one of my friends put one on. He had a meteor, and behind some of the little meteors on the plastics, they look pretty funny.
Oh, cool.
There you go.
Oh, yeah. That would be awesome. Cool.
What about the... do you have...
Nintendo Ramy says, last time I ordered more bulbs, but I got less candy. We have a thing against you. I think that's what it is.
They're like,
it's just I don't know. It's the whims of whoever's packing. Actually, it could be bad luck. It could be that the candy box ran out, and it could be there are some unfortunate situations where like if we add more than one piece of candy or even just one,
the weight
the weight limit. Yeah. So once you cross like the 1 pound threshold, it's like, okay, we love everybody, but like we don't really want to pay like $4 extra just to ship you like a Tootsie Roll.
We're taking that back.
Half of one roll.
Yeah, so once in a while you get unlucky there.
That's funny. The blinking bulbs too, those are really, really awesome to take place.
Yeah, CNK. Oh, what? Dr. John's in there? What's up, Dr. John?
Good morning.
Dr. John, what's up?
Sure, y'all were just hanging out recently?
We were just hanging out in Australia, as a matter of fact. We stayed together in an Airbnb for 10 days. Got to know more than I ever wanted to know about Dr. John. And he would say the same.
That's great.
So actually, that's one thing that I did do.
Some awesome games of cards, and got to sit in his famous massage chair at his house. That was pretty cool.
Very nice.
All right, I'm looking for. Okay, so I think let me just see about blinking bulbs. I think we have a video on our site that would show kind of the blinking bulbs and their like relative speeds. Okay, so if you go to let's see. Yeah, okay. So if you just go to the blinking bulb page, so you could just like put blinking into the search box on our page, go to the blinking bulbs product page, and then you scroll down to the bottom. There's a video that shows fast blink versus slow blink going at the same time.
Oh, nice.
And I don't know where this video is, but we have like our Addams Family kit. We use some blinking bulbs in the back box. Usually we don't necessarily go that detailed on a kit, but that game has like the back box up there has like lightning bolts and there's like a weather vane and that kind of stuff. And so I think we have like different speeds and even brightnesses of blinking bulbs in the kit, and it's a cool effect.
Yeah, those little effects make a big difference too when you're trying to make a impression. I like using the blinky bulbs on. I put them behind the title on Twilight Zone also. Having just little blinks here and there kind of looks neat, But it is important if you are going to use those for a saturated effect to definitely buy both speeds though, because you might get unlucky with all one speed and then they all kind of just go at the same time.
Yeah, they can kind of sync up. I'm not totally sure.
Most of them don't though. Most of them don't. I don't have fast and slows in my game, but it just so happens that like they'll all blink in unison for a little bit, and then they'll start to kind of, goof their way out. So the original bulb, those are my favorite bulbs ever, the blinky bulbs. And the fun thing about them is like they had like part of the contact to the filament is like magnesium or something like that. And when magnesium gets to a certain temperature, so it makes contact with the filament, it heats the filament up, and when it gets to a certain temperature, it bends, and it bends away. And that's what breaks contact, and that's what makes those blinky bulbs turn on and off seemingly at random.
Wow.
It's
pretty
so
crazy. It's just like heating up a wire sort of and melting it until it breaks and then it reforms kind of.
It's amazing though, because like when you, like I've had customers that have brought games into the shop and they have like a crap ton of blinky bulbs for whatever reason. When you turn them on, if you just sit there and listen, hearing all those little filaments like go ding, 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 it's really, really ASMR relaxing.
Yeah, we should record that with a really good mic.
I have a bunch because I buy them whenever I see them at swap meets and stuff, but I love those bulbs. They're pretty cool.
Oh.
And the fun thing too is actually a lot of games would use those from the factory, like Addams Family and Twilight Zone did use from the factory blinky bulbs. So there you go.
Yeah, cool. So you can, if you go to the, like if you were to search Addams Family on our site and go to the kit, the Addams Family kit, there's a video there of the kit installed, and like the last 15 or so seconds of that video shows the back box, and it shows different colors, speeds, and I think brightnesses of blinking bulbs. We got some accidentally one time that were like dimmer than we were expecting, and then people liked, we sold them anyway, and people liked them, so we just kept them. So now we have like dim and bright and different speeds, and so you can see it's a cool effect.
That's cool.
And then also, maybe you know this, Kyle, but didn't a lot of EMs, or maybe it was a particular manufacturer, they would use those 455 blinkers as like a tilt shut off. So
yeah, or they'd use them as like part of a delay circuit. So on some games, like that would maybe take input from a spinner or something to like select something. So I think like a Gottlieb game like Spin a Card, when the spinner was hit, it would engage a relay, and then the blinky bulb would light up, and the spinner would start spinning and selecting different things. But when it would, the blinky bulb would finish its blink, the circuit would be broken, and that's where it would stop.
Yeah,
it's
that's
insane.
cool. And I think
those guys were so
like,
smart.
You tilt, and then the bulb goes on, and then it burns itself out, or whatever. Like it blinks off, and then that's the signal. Like, okay, now
game over mode's now on.
Unpause everything and start up again.
It's so cool.
That's crazy.
The problem is though. Now here's something for everyone who's interested in light bulbs though. If you take any of those bulbs out of your games and they still work, put them in a bag and give them to someone who needs them, because any of those circuits that do require bulbs like that will not work anymore. And those bulbs are so long out of production, no longer available, that is problematic. So don't throw them away. No, don't throw away blinky bulbs. They're very important.
Yeah, and don't put an LED blinker in an EM for something that is used in a circuit like that. It's not.
Yes, and also don't put an LED in the solenoid expander socket on a Bally game, because they will not work either.
What is that? The solenoid expander?
Yeah. Do you have like a Centaur or a Vector or anything like that at the arcade?
I do not.
The solenoid expander was a way, like like how Williams would do like the AC select relay and stuff like that, where it could like switch the relay and it would like drive flashers, and then it would switch the relay back and it would do solenoids or something. Bally did something similar where it could use different drivers to drive more solenoids. Anyways, it uses a light bulb for like a load resistance, and if you put an LED in there, it will not work. I've seen a lot of people that we'd have people that would drive their game and bring it to the shop. It's like, I put LEDs into it, and now this, and this doesn't work. And because that one little socket underneath the playfield, they put an LED in there, and it screws things up. So,
all right.
The more you know.
Good to know.
Yeah,
good to know. Mutterfutter, I like your idea of the $4 option for shipping. Add as much candy as will fit. That's pretty cool. Smidge asked, what's my favorite card game? I did, there was a time where I played Texas Hold'ems, like sort of semi-professionally, and so I do really like that, but I don't know if that's my favorite. I grew up playing like Hearts and Spades. I really like those games, and we played this game called Countdown, which is similar to what Dr. John was teaching us in Australia, which he called eights, I think. Do you guys know either of those games? I don't know.
I know Countdown.
Countdown.
I've played that with my grandma.
All right, nice. Yeah, it's not necessarily like a grandma specific game, but yeah, it's
She was a cool grandma.
yeah. If anybody's interested, don't just think it's like it's for grandmas.
Hey,
only.
grandmas love good card games, though. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Oh.
And I guess I learned Pinochle. Yeah, so I grew up in the Midwest, which is where like Pinochle is a thing, but I never played it growing up. I learned that in Australia also. It's kind of weird.
Carrie Hardy says all he uses are Comet bulbs. That's right. Good choice.
All right, Carrie, thanks for saying that. How are you?
He's part of the Comet team.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to just say thanks to everybody who for the support and just of Comet products and the company. I don't even, when I'm talking to people outside of pinball, they're like, well, what do you do about marketing? And I'm like, nothing, because anytime like I find a conversation about LEDs on the internet, I'm way too late. There's like already been, everybody else is already chiming in.
They do it for you.
Yeah, promoting
awesome.
our products. So I really appreciate that. I mean, it's just like, it's just pinball and it's just LEDs, but it's really, we're just very humbled and I don't know, flattered that everybody loves our stuff so much, and we'll just keep doing it as long as we can.
Fantastic.
Yay.
Buy LEDs. Hey, so even though we have to go soon, I think Ryan needs to also talk about his other business too. We totally like breezed over that.
Yeah. Well, so yeah, I sort of started operating accidentally before even Comet, and then I guess at the peak I had maybe like 25 games or so on location, and sort of like that number kind of has fluctuated over time. But then during COVID, my favorite place to play, just Lyons Classic Pinball, which is in Lyons, Colorado. It's a town of like 2,000 people. It was, when it opened in 2003, it was one of the only places, it's the only place in Colorado pretty much, and one of the few places probably in the United States at that time that was just a pinball arcade. And so a lot of people, there are people who have moved to Colorado because of that place was here. There's people that have moved to that town because of it. And there's lots of people who went there years ago, and then they decided they should open up their own place. And so it's just like a tiny little place, just pinball and, no alcohol, nothing else. And not really even anywhere to sit. But there's games from, I guess right now, like 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, up to the modern stuff. And so I got to, the previous owners were going to retire during COVID after it had been shut down for 6 months. And I got to take over and kind of just like was able to have some like very small, like private events during COVID, and then got to open up later, and now things are good again. And it's really, people for years have been telling me that I should have my own place, and I was always saying it's a stupid idea. And and then I just kind of like, it's because I was trying to think about it as like something that would pay the bills, but I already have that with Comet, and so this place can just be something that's there for people to have a good time. You can spend $1 and like get quite a few games in. And
that's awesome. Congrats.
Yeah, thanks.
And the
Lefkoffs
play there a lot too.
Yeah, this is the place. So the Lefkoffs live, I don't know, 15 minutes away maybe. So this is the place where Escher was playing as a 3-year-old, standing on a little stool, and 15 years later, he's the #1 player in the world. And so that's been really cool because I've just been having to try and beat him for the last the last decade, that I've been playing, and
good luck.
he's been better than me that whole time, but he's very he's very generous with like his knowledge and helping people play better, and even just it's having the Lefkoffs and all the other great players in Colorado are I wouldn't be half the player I was if it weren't for those people, just learning from them and having to keep up, like just getting to see how other people play. And that's something like I've always done as a competitive player, is just really watch the good players and see what they're doing and how that differs from what I'm doing, and ask questions about it. And so yeah, it's pretty cool, like that. Escher has worked there at the arcade a little bit. He just went to college now, so doesn't have time for us anymore. But you could just like tell somebody, you're like, hey, that's the #1 player in the world over there. They're like, what? No.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
I can't wait to stop by. That place has always been so legendary, like, on the internet. And as I was discovering pinball again in 2007 or so, so.
All right. Yeah, cool. The previous owners, Kevin and Carol, they did such a great job, and I got to just sort of like, ride on their coattails, and so we'll see. I think it's probably just going to stay the same. I did get to expand, so there's like, I don't know, 16 more machines than were there in their day. So there's I think 52 right now. Got a Hercules taking up a bunch of space. And
nice.
Yeah, so it's actually tonight is the first the fall league season is starting tonight, and I missed the last one because of my trip. So I'm excited to get over there and see everybody again. And yeah, I don't know. It's just like a real, a lot. There's I don't know. It's my favorite place, and I'm glad that it's still around, and just real casual. And I try not to get too stressed out about it and like worry about games not working. And if you own if you operate games, or like you own your own place, you probably, like, I have a list in my head of all these things that it's just like, oh, this slingshot needs to be like a little more sensitive down here, and like there's a hard to reach bulb that's out somewhere, and
that's interesting. What type of bulbs does Hercules use? Standard house bulbs. I mean, it
uses just regular bulbs, and they're like so tiny in there, and embarrassingly, it's like that game is still incandescent bulbs. I don't even.
What's your Hercules set?
I've never even like opened that machine, and I'm afraid to. I know that you can't get flipper parts for that game, and so I'm not really sure what to do when it's time for flipper rebuild, which is probably right now. But maybe I'll just keep finding lighter and lighter balls to put inside, so it seems like the flippers are really strong.
Right.
I've seen people modify WPC style flippers to go inside of Hercules. The one that I used to work on still had the original rotary solenoids and everything. Just like make friends with the machinist and you can make it work. But,
okay, interesting. I know I played one at Trent Augenstein's barn. That was like last year. He's got a Hercules there. I should talk to him. That thing played great. Like, it was brightly lit, and the flippers were so strong, and I was just like amazed that mine could possibly play that way someday. So I gotta. That's the only game I'm kind of I'm embarrassed about how it plays. But everybody likes to come in and flip it one time, and then.
But I mean, but in reality, that's exactly how that game performed on location. Everyone was like, "Oh, this is neat." They played it one time. You're like, "I don't need to ever play that again." That's cool.
But and they tell everybody too. They're like, "Mom, Dad, oh my God, look at this thing," And So it's, there aren't a lot of those around, so it's cool to have one.
That is
And I don't
really
want to figure out how to move it, so it's probably just going to stay.
Yeah.
It lives in the
So,
building.
oh, I just lost Team Viewer, but
Yeah, I got you.
to end our awesome stream, which has been so great chatting with you, Ryan. But back to the cool white versus the warm white.
Oh my god. Let it die.
We should have had Carrie Hardy in, the chat a lot earlier when this was going on. But Carrie is basically saying what I said with the colors of the cool white, popping those colors out and make them more saturated and vibrant. And his argument on his getaway, right? That he won a Twippy thanks to the cool white he was using all in that game.
Oh,
that really made it pop. And it did. We all saw that game and it was beautiful.
It did, but it took a
The
lot of
colors were
work to make it
super
look that
vibrant.
good. We could go back to our old games here that they just need that warm white. It just makes them look right, You don't got to do much work. I don't know. I ain't going to say that.
So it's never gonna end, the war of warm and cool. So I think we should just all go sunlight and call it a day.
Yeah.
I think let's just take all of the lights out of our pinball machines and have no light.
Yeah, when you sell your games, sell it to somebody who is going to change the white to a different white.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, so then there's
Yeah, cool.
consistently light bulb sales.
Yeah.
Perfect. Oh,
For
man.
sure.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan.
Awesome.
It was
All right,
awesome
thank
to
you
have
so
you
much.
join us.
Thank you.
It's great being on.
We could keep this
Yeah.
going for another hour, I'm sure, but I want to go home.
I actually
eventually.
have a date to go make sure the machines are ready for leak tonight.
That sounds like a lot of
Awesome.
fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do that. And then everyone who's on Twitch, stick around because we are going to raid our favorite Manu in all the land, Mystery Pinball Theater 3000.
Yes.
Setting up. So
Gotta
we're going to go
raid
say
Manu.
hi over there. And for everyone else, we will see you next Thursday.
Yeah, goodbye,
Right.
everyone. We'll work on Baywatch some more.
Bye.
See ya.
More Baywatch. Let's finish that game, huh?
It'll take a while, but yes, we'll work on it.
It's a cool game.
All right, everyone say thanks and goodbye.
Bye.
All right, that's right.